The day had started like any other at Earth's busiest spaceport, nestled in the heart of New York. Ships of all shapes and sizes arrived from across the galaxy, some sleek and modern, others worn from years of travel. Jack Avery, a mechanic known for his ability to fix anything with wheels, wires, or engines, was in his element. He was surrounded by alien technology, hovering vehicles, transport ships, and even some pieces of technology that made no sense to him at all. It was a quiet morning, the hum of engines filling the air, when the ground suddenly trembled. Jack looked up, his hands still covered in grease. Something was wrong. The spaceport control center buzzed with activity as an emergency signal flashed on his screen. Unidentified vessel, emergency landing in hangar 14, immediate assistance required. The voice of the controller crackled. Jack's stomach churned with curiosity. Another routine emergency, perhaps? But nothing could have prepared him for what he would find. As he hurried to hangar 14, the ground beneath him seemed to shake with every step. By the time he arrived, a crowd of engineers, security officers, and workers had gathered around an enormous, glowing figure. A massive, dragon-like creature, its scales shimmering in shades of gold and silver, lay sprawled across the hangar floor. Its wings were torn and battered, its chest rising and falling in shallow, strained breaths. For a moment, Jack stood frozen, unsure whether his eyes were playing tricks on him. The creature's size alone was enough to make anyone stop in their tracks. It looked like something out of an ancient legend, a beast whose very presence seemed to defy the laws of nature. But it wasn't a myth. It was real. A smaller figure, barely half the size of the massive creature, hovered nervously near its side. This alien was slender and agile, its long tail flicking in distress. Its body was a strange blend of reptilian and avian features, with sharp, angular wings and eyes that gleamed like two emerald gems. It was clearly not from Earth. "Help, please," the alien said, its voice deep but filled with desperation. The translation device in Jack's ear hissed and crackled, making the words come out slightly distorted, but the meaning was clear. The creature was pleading for assistance. Jack's mind raced. He'd never seen anything like this before. The aliens who came to Earth for repairs were usually humanoid or robotic, but this was something completely different. "Hey, what happened?" Jack called out, trying to maintain his calm. His instincts kicked in as he moved closer to the injured creature. The alien's gaze met his, and there was something in its eyes that made his heart ache, a silent plea for help, as if it knew its time was running out. "This one, my companion, heart, dying," the alien said, its words broken but understandable. Jack frowned. "Heart? You mean its engine?" Jack asked, hoping the creature would understand. The smaller alien nodded slowly, its wings flicking with a nervous energy. "Not engine. Life core broken. Please, help." Jack took a step back, running his fingers through his hair. His mind was spinning. A life core? What kind of technology was that? The creature didn't seem mechanical. Its body was organic. But the way it talked about its core made Jack wonder if it was part machine, part living organism. All right, I'll take a look," Jack said, trying to steady his breathing. He didn't have time to waste. The creature's condition was critical. Every minute counted. He knelt down beside the massive dragon, his eyes scanning its body for any signs of damage. There were deep gashes along its wings, and its scales had begun to darken, like they were slowly losing their shimmer. But it wasn't just the physical damage that concerned Jack. It was the way the creature's chest struggled to rise and fall, as if it was fighting against an invisible force. Jack pressed his fingers gently to the creature's side. His touch was light, but even so, the beast's body jerked slightly, reacting to the pressure. Jack could feel the vibrations inside. Something was off. Its life force, its energy, was unstable. If he didn't figure out what was wrong, it wouldn't be long before the creature's body shut down entirely. The smaller alien, still hovering anxiously nearby, spoke again. "It is the heart. We are bound to it. Without it, we die," Jack frowned. "But how am I supposed to fix that? I don't even know what I'm looking at." He stood up and looked around, trying to find something, anything that could help him understand what he was dealing with. For a moment, the alien looked away, its expression one of sadness. "I know you are not from our world, but we have nowhere else to turn. You are the only one who can help us." Jack stared at the creature for a long time, its eyes fixed on him, filled with desperation. Despite his reservations, despite the fact that this was an alien species, something so far beyond anything he could comprehend, he couldn't turn his back. The creature was dying, and this alien had come to him, a stranger, for help. "All right," Jack said finally, his voice steady. "I'll try, but I'm going to need to see exactly what we're working with. I'll need to get you onto a more stable surface. You can trust me, I've fixed ships, engines, all kinds of things. I'll do my best." The alien nodded, clearly relieved, though still filled with anxiety. It gently touched the larger creature's side, as if offering some kind of comfort before it slowly backed away. Jack took a deep breath and started to work. He knew this was unlike anything he had ever encountered, but he also knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when the creature's life hung in the balance. The hangar was quiet now, except for the hum of the spaceport's automated systems. Outside, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if watching, waiting to see if Jack could work the miracle he had been asked to perform. Cliffhanger. Jack took another step forward, examining the creature's body more closely. The more he looked, the more he realized just how complicated this would be. If the alien's life core was truly damaged beyond repair, then no amount of skill, no amount of tools would be enough to save it. But if there was even the smallest chance that he could fix it, he had to try. The hangar was filled with a strange silence. The quiet hum of machinery was the only sound as Jack carefully examined the massive dragon lying before him. The creature's wings, once majestic, now lay broken and tattered, its once shimmering scales dull and cracked. Its chest rose and fell with shallow, labored breaths. Time was running out. Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to focus. He had seen some serious damage in his time as a mechanic. Crashed ships, faulty engines, even whole sections of spacecraft that had exploded. But this was different. This wasn't just machinery that could be repaired with parts. This was a living being. Its life was intertwined with the very technology that powered it. The smaller alien, who had introduced itself as Torath, stood anxiously nearby, watching Jack with wide, worried eyes. Torath's long tail flicked nervously, and his wings twitched as if he were ready to spring into action at any moment. He had been silent for a while now, letting Jack work, but the weight of his gaze never left him. Jack looked up at the smaller creature. "I need you to tell me everything about the heart, about this life core," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. His hands hovered over the creature's chest, feeling the faint, uneven vibrations of its pulse. "How does it work?" Torath's eyes flickered with something like relief. "The core, it is not just a machine. It is part of us. It is what keeps us alive, what keeps our species alive. Without it, we die," Torath explained, his voice deep but full of emotion. "Our species, the Torath, are bound to our life cores. It connects us to our world, to our ancestors. If one of us is dying, the core, it weakens." Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had no idea how to fix something so complex. But this wasn't just any alien. It was a creature in front of him, pleading for its life. Jack had seen enough desperation in people's eyes to know that when someone trusted you with their life, you didn't let them down. "Okay," Jack muttered to himself. "I can do this. I just need to think." He stepped back and began running his hands over the creature's body, scanning for anything that looked like a connection to the life core. Torath watched him with cautious hope. "Please, save him," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. "Without him, we are lost." Jack hesitated for a moment. He couldn't help but wonder what Torath meant. Was the larger creature really the last of its kind? If it died, would the whole species disappear? The weight of that knowledge settled on Jack's shoulders. Not only was he trying to save a life, but he might be saving an entire species. "All right," Jack said, shaking off the uncertainty. "Let's see what we're working with." He knew he needed more than just basic tools to fix this. This wasn't a broken ship or a faulty engine. It was something much more intricate, a combination of living tissue and complex alien technology. There was no manual, no instructions, just the hope that his knowledge of mechanics and engineering would be enough. Jack reached into his toolkit, pulling out a series of small, delicate tools he had never thought he'd use for something like this. As he worked, he kept his focus on the dragon's chest, looking for any indication of where the heart or life core might be located. He could feel the steady pulse of energy inside the creature, but it was unstable, flickering like a dying flame. Torath moved closer, his eyes glued to Jack's every move. "You can fix it, right?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Please." Jack paused, looking at Torath for a moment. The desperation in his eyes mirrored the creature's condition. He swallowed hard, trying to push down the growing sense of panic. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm going to try." He carefully removed a small panel from the creature's chest, exposing what appeared to be a complex system of bioorganic components. Strange crystalline structures pulsated softly beneath the surface, glowing with an otherworldly light. Jack's fingers brushed over the delicate system, feeling the energy flowing through it. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Part living tissue, part technology, and all of it was on the verge of breaking down. "This is it," Jack muttered to himself, more to calm his nerves than anything else. "This is where I need to work." He reached into his toolkit and pulled out a small device he used for diagnosing mechanical systems. He plugged it into the exposed core, watching as the device scanned the alien technology. The screen flickered, displaying lines of code Jack couldn't understand. But there was one thing he could make out. The energy levels were dangerously low, and there was an imbalance between the organic and mechanical components. "This is a mess," Jack said, frowning. "If I don't stabilize this quickly, the whole system could collapse." Torath stepped closer, his wings flaring slightly as he observed Jack's actions. "Can you save him?" he asked again, his voice trembling. Jack hesitated. He could feel the weight of Torath's words, the immense trust the alien had placed in him. He had no idea how this was going to end, but one thing was certain: he couldn't give up. Not when the creature's life and the future of an entire species was on the line. Taking a deep breath, Jack began working faster, connecting wires, rerouting energy, and doing his best to stabilize the core. It was a delicate balance, one that required every bit of his mechanical expertise and more. He had to adjust the energy flow just right, aligning the organic components with the artificial ones to prevent a total failure. The creature's chest gave a soft hum, like a sigh of relief. Jack's eyes widened. Was it working? He wasn't sure, but the pulse inside the core was stronger, more stable than it had been just moments ago. But just as Jack thought he was making progress, the core flickered once again, and the creature's body jerked violently, a sharp, almost painful cry echoing through the hangar. Jack jumped back, his heart racing. "No, no, no!" he muttered, trying to steady himself. Torath's wings flared in panic. "What's happening?" "I'm not sure," Jack said, his mind racing. "It's like the system's rejecting the energy. Something's not syncing." Jack's hands trembled as he rechecked the connections. The creature was still alive, but the core was unstable. There was one final step, one final adjustment he needed to make. But if he didn't get it right, the consequences could be catastrophic. He steeled himself, taking another deep breath. "This has to work." Cliffhanger. As Jack prepared for the final adjustment, the creature's body let out a loud, throaty growl. The energy in the room spiked, and Jack could feel the tension in the air. He had one chance to save the creature, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on him harder than ever before. The air in the hangar was thick with tension. Jack's fingers trembled as he worked, trying to keep his mind focused on the task before him. His eyes were fixed on the alien creature's life core, the strange, glowing crystal that seemed to pulse with an energy both beautiful and dangerous. The energy was flickering, unstable, almost like it was resisting his attempts to repair it. Jack had spent the last hour trying everything he knew, connecting wires, adjusting energy flows, and rerouting systems, but the more he tried, the more the core seemed to push back. The creature's chest continued to rise and fall erratically, each breath more shallow than the last. Its life was slipping away. Torath, the smaller alien, hovered nearby, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. He had been watching Jack's every move, almost as if willing the human to succeed. Jack could see the anxiety in his eyes, but there was something else too. A quiet, deep trust. The kind of trust that came from knowing that the fate of an entire species might rest on the hands of a stranger. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, trying to push aside the weight of that responsibility. This was bigger than just saving one life. It was about saving an entire species. The Torath were dying, and the large creature in front of him was one of the last of its kind. If Jack failed, the entire species would be lost. "I can't do this," Jack muttered to himself. His voice sounded small in the vast hangar. He could feel the pressure mounting. This wasn't just a malfunctioning engine. This was life and death. The weight of that truth hit him harder with every passing second. Torath, still standing by, stepped forward. "What is wrong?" "You are. Struggling?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. "Is there a way to fix him?" Jack stood back, staring at the pulsing life core, trying to think of something he hadn't yet tried. I'm not sure. The energy is all wrong," he said, his voice heavy with frustration. "This core, it's not just some machine, it's alive. There's a balance here, something I don't understand." Torath's wings twitched as he stepped closer. "Please," he whispered. "Without him, we are lost. Our people will cease to exist. I cannot allow that to happen." Jack's heart tightened. The creature's fate, the future of the Torath species, was all in his hands, and yet the more he worked, the more it seemed like an impossible task. "I'm trying," Jack said, his voice rough, "but I don't know if I can fix this. I've never dealt with anything like this before." Torath's eyes darkened, but there was no anger in them, only sadness and determination. "I know you are trying, but time is running out. If you do not act quickly, he will be gone, and when he is gone, we will have no hope." Jack's gaze flickered to the dragon-like creature again. Its massive form lay motionless on the hangar floor, its breathing growing weaker with each passing minute. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. There had to be something he could do. He couldn't just walk away. Not now. As he stared at the creature, an idea began to form in his mind. He had been looking at this all wrong. This wasn't just a mechanical issue. It was a life force, a delicate balance of organic and artificial energy. Maybe, just maybe, if he could stabilize the energy flow, he could restore the creature's life. But there was a problem. To do that, Jack would need to connect the creature's life force directly to his own. He would have to merge his own energy with the core in order to restart it. It was dangerous. He could burn out his own system, or worse, die in the process. But if he didn't try, the creature would die, and with it, the hope of the Torath. Jack's hands shook as he thought about it. The risk was immense, but the reward was even greater. If he succeeded, he could save not only this one life, but an entire species. If he failed, he would be just another failure. Just another person who couldn't help when it mattered most. He looked at Torath, who was watching him, waiting for a decision. "I think I might know how to do it," Jack said, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "But I'm going to need your help." Torath's eyes widened and he stepped forward. "What do you need?" Jack took a deep breath. "I need to link my life force with the core. I need you to guide me. I don't know how it works, but you can show me. You understand this better than I do." Torath nodded slowly. "We are bound to the core, yes. But this will be difficult. If it goes wrong, we both could be lost, I know," Jack said. "But if we don't try, then we're all lost." Torath hesitated for a moment, as if weighing the gravity of the decision. Then, with a determined nod, he stepped forward, his wings spreading slightly. "I will help you. But you must be careful. The core is fragile and our lives are intertwined with it. If the connection is broken, there will be no chance to save him." Jack glanced at the creature once more, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no choice. This was the only way. He took a step closer to the life core, placing his hands gently on its surface. The strange, cool energy radiated through his fingers, and he felt a slight tremor in his body as he made the connection. Torath moved in behind him, placing his hands on Jack's shoulders, and the energy within the core flared to life. For a moment, nothing happened. The world seemed to hold its breath as Jack felt the pulse of energy from the core sync with his own. It was as if his heart had merged with the creature's and the world around him began to blur. He could feel the strain on his body, the energy drawing from his own reserves, but he had to keep going. He had to save it. Then, without warning, the core began to glow brighter. The creature's chest surged, its heart beating stronger with each passing second. The energy was stabilizing, the imbalance fading away as the life core hummed with power. But just as it seemed like Jack had succeeded, the energy surged violently. Jack's body jolted as the force threatened to overwhelm him. He gasped, his vision blurring, but he couldn't let go. He had to hold on, or the creature and everything he had worked for would be lost. Cliffhanger. The core's energy exploded in a bright flash, and Jack's body shook with the force. His vision swam, and for a moment he thought he might lose consciousness. The pulse of energy intensified, and he couldn't tell if he was still connected to the core, or if it had taken over entirely. Was he too late? The air in the hangar crackled with energy as Jack's hands remained pressed against the alien creature's life core. His body trembled from the strain of the connection, and his vision blurred with every passing second. The surge of power from the core was growing stronger, almost overwhelming him. The energy pulsed through his veins, a force that felt both alien and familiar. It was as if the creature's life was now bound to his own. Jack's heart raced. His breath was shallow as the pain intensified, yet he couldn't let go. If he did, the creature, Torath's companion, would die. The core's energy had started to stabilize, but only for a moment. Now the power was threatening to tear him apart. He could hear Torath's voice, distant yet clear. "You must hold on, Jack." "You are so close." The words seemed to cut through the fog in Jack's mind, pulling him back to the present. He couldn't afford to lose focus. He had to finish this. He had to save them. Jack gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain. His hands pressed harder against the glowing surface of the core. The world around him seemed to vanish as his consciousness became a blur of light and energy. There was no turning back now. He had made his choice. The creature's body let out a low, guttural sound, a faint growl like a breath of life returning. Slowly, its massive chest began to rise and fall more evenly. Jack could feel the vibrations inside, like a pulse he could almost hear in his own body. The imbalance was shifting, correcting itself, but it wasn't enough yet. He had to keep going. Torath's hands were still on his shoulders, guiding him through the process. "Focus, Jack," Torath said, his voice filled with urgency. "The connection is fragile. Do not let go." Jack nodded weakly, his head spinning. He could barely hold on, but he couldn't give up now. Not when he was so close. Suddenly, the energy from the core surged again, more violently this time. Jack gasped as it flowed through him, and he could feel his body being stretched to its limit. His muscles burned, his skin tingled, and his breath caught in his chest. But through it all, he held firm. The life of this creature depended on him. The future of the Torath depended on him. His fingers tingled with an electric charge as the energy coursed through him, but Jack focused on the one thing that mattered, the creature's survival. He didn't know how much longer he could last, but he had to keep pushing. There was no other choice. The seconds felt like hours. The light from the core grew blinding, the pulsing energy swirling around him in a dance of life and death. Jack felt a sense of weightlessness, as if he were no longer tethered to the ground. The creature's breath came more evenly now, its energy levels stabilizing with each passing moment. Then, just as Jack thought he might break, something changed. The core flashed one final time, and then the pulse steadied. The bright, glowing light faded into a soft glow, and the energy that had once been erratic and unstable became calm, controlled. Jack's hands slowly released their grip, and the connection between him and the creature's life core began to fade. The creature's chest rose and fell with a strong, steady rhythm. Its breathing was no longer labored. It was alive. Jack collapsed to his knees, his body exhausted from the strain. He could barely catch his breath, but he felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. The impossible had happened. He had done it. The creature was alive. For a long moment, there was silence in the hangar. The only sound was the steady breathing of the dragon-like creature. Jack sat there, his back against the cold metal floor, trying to regain his strength. Torath was the first to speak. "You did it," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. He stepped forward and knelt beside Jack, his eyes locked on the now stable creature. He is alive," Jack nodded weakly, unable to find words. His body was completely drained, and the exhaustion weighed heavily on him. But there was something else, too. A sense of accomplishment, of having done something that most people would have thought impossible. Torath gently placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You are a miracle worker," he said, his voice soft but full of emotion. "You have saved us all." Jack managed a weak smile, his head still spinning. "I didn't do it alone. You helped. You helped guide me." Torath shook his head. "No, it was you who made the choice. You took the risk. You saved him." As Jack looked at the creature, now breathing steadily and no longer on the brink of death, he felt a sense of wonder. He had saved a life, a creature from another world, an entire species, and he had done it in a way that seemed impossible. The creature's massive eyes slowly opened, and for the first time since it had fallen to the hangar floor, there was a glimmer of life in them. It blinked slowly, looking around before its gaze settled on Jack. With great effort, the creature lifted its head, letting out a low, rumbling sound. It was not a growl of pain, but a sound of recognition. Torath stepped forward, his wings fluttering slightly. "He thanks you," Torath said, his voice thick with emotion. "We all thank you." Jack could barely muster the strength to stand. He had saved the creature, but he felt like he could collapse at any moment. He reached out to steady himself against the hangar wall, his legs shaky. But as he looked at the two Torath, he knew one thing for certain. He had done something that mattered. He had made a difference. The hangar, once filled with panic and uncertainty, now felt strangely quiet, as if the entire universe had paused to take a breath. The creature, its life restored, let out another rumbling sound, this time one of gratitude. Torath, watching Jack closely, nodded toward the creature. "We owe you our lives," he said, "and we will never forget your kindness." Jack smiled weakly, still feeling the weight of exhaustion but also a quiet sense of peace. "I'm just glad I could help." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence, peaceful, calm, and filled with the knowledge that something extraordinary had just happened. Then, slowly, the creature began to rise to its feet. It moved slowly at first, testing its strength, but it seemed to grow more confident with each step. Its wings fluttered once, then twice, and soon it was standing tall and proud once again. Jack watched in awe as the creature stretched its wings, then turned to look at Torath. The two shared a silent moment of understanding, a bond forged through this life-or-death experience. The larger creature then turned back to Jack and bowed its head in a gesture of respect. Cliffhanger. As the creature began to lift off the ground, its wings spread wide. A strange hum filled the air. Jack could feel a ripple in the energy around him, as if something much bigger was about to unfold. The creature looked back at him one last time, its eyes glowing with a deep ancient light. What would happen next? The story was far from over. The air in the hangar was still humming with the lingering energy from the creature's revival. Jack, now exhausted and barely able to stand, watched in awe as the massive alien dragon stretched its wings, testing its strength. The creature's breathing was deep and steady, and its once dim eyes now glowed with a fierce new vitality. It seemed like a miracle. A being that had been on the brink of death now stood alive and strong once again. Torath, standing nearby, seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere. His wings flickered nervously as he looked between Jack and the creature. It is incredible," Torath said, his voice filled with awe. "You have done what no one thought possible. You have saved him." Jack barely nodded. His body felt like it was made of lead, and the exhaustion was pulling him down. He had given everything to save the creature. But now, as he watched it stand, there was a deep sense of peace in him. He had done the right thing, but the moment of peace didn't last long. A low rumble, distant at first, began to grow louder. It wasn't just the creature's awakening that was causing it. It was something much more troubling. Jack turned toward Torath, his eyes narrowing. "What's that noise?" Torath's eyes flickered with fear. "It is them," he whispered. "The Kravs." Jack's blood ran cold. He had heard of the Kravs before, an alien species feared across the galaxy for their ruthless invasions and destructive power. The Torath had fought them before, and the few who had survived spoke of nothing but terror. To hear that name sent a chill through Jack's spine. "The Kravs are here?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "How? We've only just repaired the creature." Torath's face tightened with worry. "The Kravs know we are weak. They knew he would die. Now, with him restored, they will come to finish what they started. They will not allow our species to survive." Jack's head was spinning. It felt like everything he had just fought for was slipping away. He had barely saved the creature, and now an entire alien empire was coming to destroy them all. "We need to leave," Jack said, taking a step back. His body was still trembling from the energy he had given to the creature. He didn't know how much fight was left in him, but he couldn't let the Kravs destroy everything. But Torath shook his head, his expression firm. "No, Jack, we cannot run. If we flee now, they will find us. We must stand and fight." Jack stared at him, his mind racing. He had no idea how to fight an alien empire. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier. But Torath's determination was clear. The creature that Jack had just saved would not go down without a fight, and neither would Torath. They were bound to each other now in ways Jack could barely understand. The rumble grew louder, shaking the hangar. The sound of engines, massive and terrifying, was unmistakable. The Kravs were coming. Jack's gaze turned to the creature still standing tall and proud, its wings flexing. The dragon-like being let out a powerful roar that echoed through the hangar, and Jack felt it deep in his chest. This was no ordinary creature. It was a warrior, a symbol of everything the Torath had fought for. It wasn't going to let the Kravs take them without a fight. Torath stepped forward, his voice resolute. "Jack, we need to prepare. I will fight with him. Your skills. You can help us." "You can be the difference," Jack blinked in surprise. "Help? How am I supposed to help?" "I don't know anything about fighting. You know how to fix things. You understand technology. If you can find a way to disrupt their ships or their weapons, we might stand a chance." Torath said, urgency in his voice. "The Kravs will attack with overwhelming force, but we have to try." Jack swallowed hard. The reality of the situation was sinking in. He was being asked to fight not with weapons, but with the one skill he knew best: repairing things. He didn't have a choice. If he didn't help, they would all be lost. The hangar doors began to rumble and a loud crack echoed through the air. Jack's heart raced as he turned toward the source of the sound. The Kravs ships were arriving. He could see the shadows of massive dark ships looming outside the hangar, blocking out the light. "We don't have much time," Jack said, his voice steady despite the panic rising in him. He looked at Torath, then at the creature still standing strong. "All right, I'll help. Just tell me what you need." Torath gave him a sharp nod. "Follow me." They quickly moved toward the hangar's control center, a small room filled with computers, monitors, and weapon systems. Jack had worked in this part of the spaceport before, fixing malfunctioning equipment or calibrating ships. But now he was going to need to do more than fix things. He had to find a way to stop the Kravs, somehow. Torath handed him a small device, a communicator. "This will link us to the ship's defense systems. You can use it to access their weaponry and disrupt their systems." Jack stared at the device, his mind racing. He had never hacked into anything like this before, but he had fixed enough machinery to know how to manipulate most systems. "Okay, I'll do my best." The creature, now fully recovered, stepped forward with a powerful roar. It seemed ready to charge into battle, its energy restored by the connection to Jack. Torath placed a hand on the creature's shoulder, speaking a few words in their native tongue. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, a sign of its readiness. As the Kravs' ships moved closer, the ground began to shake again. Jack could hear the engines of the massive warships rumbling in the distance. They weren't just coming to destroy the Torath. They were coming to wipe out everything in their path. Jack's fingers flew over the controls, trying to access the spaceport's security systems. The device Torath had given him beeped in response, and a screen appeared in front of him, displaying the Kravs ship's status. "They're close," Jack muttered to himself, sweat pouring down his face. He had no time to hesitate. He quickly began working, his mind focused only on the task at hand. Torath stood beside him, watching. "You are our last hope," he said quietly. "You are the reason we still stand a chance." Jack didn't respond. He didn't need to. The Kravs' ships were almost upon them, and if he didn't act fast, everything they had fought for would be lost. With one last, desperate move, Jack accessed the weapon systems of the Kravs' ships. He used the device to send a jolt of energy into their power grid, overloading their systems. The ships shuddered, and for a moment, it seemed like everything had stopped. Then, with a loud explosion, the Kravs' ships went dark. The hangar was filled with silence. The rumble of the ships gone, Jack let out a deep breath, collapsing to his knees. The battle wasn't over, but they had won the first round. The Kravs had been disabled, at least for now. Torath turned to Jack, his eyes wide with amazement. "You did it." Jack nodded, still gasping for air.
"For now."
"We're safe."